Hello, everyone. We are back with another episode of Life and Law, and tonight we have a special guest, KDawn Stone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Theodora, and I'm glad to be here on your show.
It's my pleasure. And can you just start by just giving us a little brief introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. I am a mother, and I tried to report abuse in family court and with the police, and I had everything turned around on me, and they still tried to give the father full custody. So because I saw that injustice, I thought, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to try to help the children. And so I kind of threw myself into the world of advocacy, and I believe that's how we met. And I'm just here to share whatever I can help and hope that it helps.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And so, can you just tell a little bit more details? Because I know that you are one of the rare cases where you actually were able to get justice in a sense at the end. So can you just share a little bit about what your experience was like and how you were able to get custody back and everything in the end?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that I got justice. We got away. And that was like the best thing that could happen in our situation was we just got away. And that was it. There's absolutely no justice that was served in our case. So I'll give you some backstory. My husband and we met when we were really young, and we dated for like 8 years before getting married. And then we got married, and he didn't want any kids, and I already had a son. And I was like, you know what? Or no, he told me he wanted a daughter after we got married. And I was like, you know what? I always wanted a girl, so okay, let's try it. And so we got pregnant, and we were living in Las Vegas at the time. We moved to Maui. And then that's when the abuse started. And it was just like he just slapped me one time. And I remember thinking, oh no, this isn't good, because my son's father was also very abusive. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? This is scary. I tried to talk to his parents about it, and they just were like, why can't you see the bigger picture? So I clearly knew that this was something that was like generational or familial. And he was a paramedic in Las Vegas for 10 years. And when we moved to Maui, I remember him telling me something like, I think I have CPTSD, he said, and I really want to get help. I think I'm going crazy. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. How can I help you? We had a brand new baby. And he said that, or I suggested counseling, and he was like, no, it's okay. It's okay. And then he was working at the hospital in Maui. And so he would have really irregular sleeping schedule. And then I started to notice the sexual abusive acts towards my daughter. My daughter was acting out and like mimicking the things that were happening to her. And I was in so much shock and disbelief, because there's nothing that breaks your heart more than thinking that you're in a safe, loving relationship, to find out that the person that you think you're madly in love with is betraying you in the ultimate way, you know what I mean? And betraying your family and betraying your child. And so it was really difficult for me. And I had a really hard time processing it. And a lot of it, I just kind of internalized and became very angry. And, sorry. And it was interesting because he would try to gaslight me and tell me that, because I'd ask him, I'd be like, what was that I just saw? Or what's going on? And he'd be like, no, that's you, that's your from you being sexually assaulted as a child. You're just making it up in your head. Da, 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 you're crazy. And, I was like wanting to believe that, but I knew better because I was sexually abused as a child. So I do know what that energy feels like. I know what it looks like. I know how, everything in my body was screaming there was something wrong. So I got this oscillating camera fan. It was just a fan, like, those 3-foot tall fans from Amazon, but it had a camera in it, a video camera. So I could record from it. And if any action happened in the room, it would record it and then it would send it to my phone. Well, I had a girlfriend, and my daughter now was like 1 year old, maybe 18 months, around there. And I had a friend in London who was a police officer. And so I had told her already about all of these things and my concerns about what was happening and the things that I was witnessing. And she was like, yes, we have to get proof because it's your word against his, and his family had a lot of money. And so I knew that I'd be, up against a lot of lawyers. And so we tried every nanny camera out there that you could even possibly think of on Amazon, and none of them worked. None of the spy cameras worked. Nothing worked except for this oscillating camera fan. And I captured something on my phone, and I remember thinking, oh, this is so weird. I'm going to send it to my friend in London to have her look at it better and see what she thinks. And so I sent it to her really quick because I didn't have time. I was always with my daughter because I was very protective. And so if he was home from work, he was always trying to be around us. And so I was trying to do it really quick when he wasn't looking. So I didn't really have a chance to look at it. But what she found on it, she had to send in to her forensic team, and she had to file a police report because when the forensic team slowed it down frame by frame, they labeled it and classified it as CSAM in London. So, and she had to explain how she got the video and why. And so then she's telling me that I have to go to the police so that I can get a police report number to give her to put into her report, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, hold on. Because you know how it is. You're just terrified. You don't know what you're going to walk into. You don't know what the court battle is going to be like, even though I did have an assumption that they would protect us and that they would do the right thing and that they would look at it and they would, review all the evidence. I did know I needed solid evidence. And I thought, okay, well, this should be enough then because my friend is saying it's enough. And then my little sister was getting married on the island, and all my sisters were there. And one of my sisters is a court clerk for the courts in Utah. And I showed her the video, and she screamed and dropped the video, my phone, and was like, yes, you need to go right now, and I'll go with you to the police department. So she went with me to the police department, and we reported the crimes, and I gave them the video, and they reprimanded me for not coming sooner, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I was placed with a Detective Sergeant Satterfield. And he looked at everything, and he was really nice. He took I was the only one with a laptop. He took that in. He took my sisters and I's reports. He did everything he should have done. And then he was walking me somewhere, and we were alone in the elevator, just him and I and my daughter. And he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Utah." And he's like, "That's where your family is?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You need to move. You should go back there." And I was thinking, why would he say that? Is he trying to entrap me? If I leave, isn't that kidnapping? That's what I was thinking. So I was like, that's weird. Okay. Why would he say that to me? So that's in the back of my mind. So then I'm going forward. The attorney general never contacts me. The district attorney never contacts me. Nobody ever contacts me about the video again, not even the detective. Then I go to court, and filled out this protective order, and I'm ready to submit it, or I submitted it to court. And then my ex's lawyer found me in one of the side rooms and served me papers for a divorce. So then when I walked into the court hearing, they said, well, this is going to be for a protective order. And he said, excuse me, we have a divorce too. So then it all got rolled into the divorce. So they never heard anything right away. And by the time we got to like the third or fourth hearing, I believe it was, and they finally wanted to start talking about the evidence and stuff like that, it was with Judge Lloyd Pullman. And I could just tell immediately that he was attracted to my ex, because he was like looking him up and down from the stand and like checking him out. And my lawyer, or his lawyer, and my ex were all laughing and joking and having a good time. And I'm sitting there thinking, hey, they're going to see the video and everything's going to be okay. They're going to see the video and everything's going to be okay. But then my ex's lawyer walks up with his phone to the judge and says, here's the video. And I said, excuse me, can't we watch it? Because I wasn't being represented at that time. I was like, can't we watch it on the TV here in the courtroom? And they were like, no, it doesn't work, or something like that. They gave me some excuse. And the judge picked it up for like 0.3 seconds, looked at it, and then put it down and was like, I don't see anything. I don't know what you're talking about. And then if there was anything, the district attorney or the attorney general would have acted on it now, and there isn't anything. So I'm going to award the father full custody. That's what he said immediately after looking at that. And I was like, what the hell? No, I was being represented that time. That time I did have a lawyer, and I thought she was like a bulldog. I thought she was going to go in there and like just be like, and like get her way. But when she got into the courtroom, she turned into a deer in the headlights and never said anything until that moment, until the judge said, we're going to give dad full custody because you keep bringing up creepy people. You say that there's creepy people or whatever, because I was saying that his dad was creepy and there were creepy things happening. And the judge threatened me, you can't use that word anymore. And if you ever bring up abuse again, I'm giving the father full custody. And my lawyer said that's not due process. And that judge just like glared at her like he wanted to burn holes through her body. And I'll tell you, shortly after that court hearing, she moved off island, because that's how cliquey and boys clubs, like how they act in the courtroom, is they act like it's literally a cult. If you don't follow what they all want to do, which is keep you in court the longest, and then you're in trouble. And so that's what they tried to do with me there. But thankfully, my lawyer thwarted that. But I fired her as well, because I was like, I hired you to fight for me. And then all of a sudden, the only thing you could say was that. I don't think so. And the judge had ordered that we do 50-50, because my lawyer said that. And so the day that I was supposed to drop her off, my daughter off for her first visit with her father, I just said to him, I said, you know what? I really miss you. I love you. I want us to be a family again. And let's just put this behind us. And he was like, okay, yeah, yay, And I was like, oh God, thank God. Because I didn't want to leave her alone. Like, I knew my hands were tied with the courts and I didn't want to leave her alone. And I forgot that in between those 3 court sessions, they were giving her father supervised visits. And during the supervised visits, my daughter did report that something happened. And when I went to the detective to tell him that, He took my daughter and put her in foster care. He took her away from me for reporting again. And it was at that point that like things started to feel like everybody was trying to push this on me, like it was all my fault that I brought up the abuse, that I was the crazy person. It was terrifying. I remember being in such a state of shock that after that court hearing that I went to there's like a Whole Foods on Maui, and I went there to get a smoothie, and then I ended up sitting in the parking lot shaking and throwing up for like 3 hours straight because my nervous system, my entire body went into shock because it finally hit me. It hit me. These people are evil. They don't give a fuck about us, and they're only doing whatever is going to pay them the most, or they're just completely evil and don't care that a father is sexually assaulting their child. And to me, that was the scariest part, because I was like, holy shit, there are really evil people in the world. And I couldn't believe that they were the people that were in power. The judges and the cops and the lawyers were all, seemingly felt like they were in on it. And it kind of made me feel like, well, I was hyper paranoid. And I remember I couldn't be around any men because I just couldn't trust anyone. And it was really damaging for my reputation. And nobody wanted to talk to me anymore. My family was mad at me. Like everybody was mad at me. And it exploded into this thing. And then when I went back to him, like everybody was just like, what the hell is going on? They had no clue, but I did not care. The only thing I cared about was that my daughter wouldn't be alone with him, because I had seen what was happening when I was there, and I was terrified to think of what could happen when I wasn't there. And then
So just
he
to
became,
just to sort of ask a question. So you
yeah,
said that when you went to go report the abuse, and this was in Hawaii, correct?
correct, yeah.
And so when they took your daughter and put her in foster care, was this like a unilateral decision that the detective made on his own, or was CPS involved in this decision?
I'm not sure, but I do know that CPS was there. I want to say that it was his idea, because literally the next morning he called me and asked me if I wanted to recant my testimony. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. It's a documentary about how women who report sexual abuse often get told that like, we don't believe you, blah 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 blah. And this ruse that these cops use is legal for them to use, and it's a tactic for them to shut the case without them having to do any work,
And
to
so
get
how
that
long did
case
your
off their back.
daughter, and so
3
how many days?
days, only 3
3 days?
days. So get this, okay. They took her, they allowed me to see her every single day, and have phone calls with the foster people, because like literally they did it illegally and they should have never have done that, and or taken her. He tried to get me to recant my story, which was part of the cops' ruse so they can close the docket and get it off their thing without it looking like they aren't doing their work, right? And he did get promoted because he's sergeant now, so fucker, he's been doing this to a lot of people. And it's interesting because so I was in the shelter with her, the women's domestic violence shelter there in Maui. And it was interesting because they kicked me out the same day, because they were like, oh, your daughter's not with you, you can't be in here, get out. And I was like, oh, okay, because how am I going to get her back if I don't have anywhere to be? And so I was looking for places that would rent me a room. And I finally found this man deep in the jungle of Walo, and he called himself the bush doctor. And he showed me his property. He had like this dome that he was renting out, like a yurt. And then at the end, he was like, just kind of looking at me, and I was like, what do you do? And he's like, I do body work, massage, that kind of stuff. But he's spun it like he's more spiritual than that. You know what I mean? But for me, I was just like, okay, whatever. I do need a massage like that. Is there any way that you would work on me? I can give you whatever you need, like I am just dying because those 3 days I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was like a wreck. I was like, you know how it is when you're like extreme adrenaline and you're just like, feel like your insides are ripping to shreds and all the angels in heaven are just bawling and wailing. It felt like that. And he was like, yeah, sure. So he works on me on this table on his deck patio, which overlooked like the ocean and the cliffs in Maui. And I thought he left. Or no, I thought he was still with me, working on me, and he had left. He had gone inside his home and was just like letting me sleep because I guess I fell asleep. But I had this dream where like a lightning bolt went through the top of my head and then it came out my hand and my foot, my right leg, my right foot. And then I had birthed my daughter again. And I somehow, during all of that vision or that dream, I just like released all this negativity and I woke up and I felt amazing. Like I felt amazing and like I didn't know how to like interpret what had happened in my dream, but I was telling him about it and my phone kept going. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I got to see what this is. And it was literally CPS and they're like, come pick up your daughter. And I was
Wow.
like, oh, okay, well, I'm coming right now. I'm out in Nuevo, it's going to take me like 25, 30 minutes. I'll be right there. But then on my way to go get her, her dad calls and says, this is all your fault. This is all your fault. She was in there. No, 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 no. Gaslight, gaslight, gaslight. And I was like, oh, whatever, whatever. And then he's like, my dad had to give the lawyer $30,000 and he went to the CPS manager and gave that to him and said that, I'm not abusive, so he can let my daughter go. And you got to go pick her up. And I was like, okay, whatever, whatever, whatever. So I went and picked her up and then that right after that we got back together and then he was jealous that we lived in somebody else's house and we had this really nice house and the people, so there were a lot of cops involved that took like different reports and stuff, and I guess one of them came into the ER where he was working and they were like, we totally don't believe you molested your daughter at all. And it really like pissed him off. And so he came home and he was like, or over to my house and he was like trying to start a fight with me and said he wanted to leave the island. And I was like, okay, let's go. And he's like, where do you want to go? And I was like, let's go to Utah. And he's like, no, let's go to Vegas because that's where he's from. And I was like, oh, hell no. We're definitely not going to Vegas where all your uncles and your dads are the captains of the fire departments. Because now I know who you guys all are and why you guys are all in those positions. So there's no way in hell we're going to Las Vegas. And then we decided on Colorado because they had legal marijuana and he was very into legal marijuana at that time. And so it was like our compromise. And it was close enough to Utah that I could just drive over to Utah and see my family because he used to work at the Air Force, like some sort of like military base in Colorado Springs. So I kept going and visiting my family. And then finally he was like, oh, why don't we move to Utah so you can be close to your family and Violet can be close to her cousins. And I was like, I love that idea. Good idea. But it took a whole year of living with him in Colorado. I believe he idolized murdering us because he took us to the mountains with pickaxe in the back of the car, and my neighbor had recorded him swinging the pickaxe around before we left, and then he just like up in the middle of the night and just left us there. And so you could tell there was a lot of like mental illness going on in his mind, and I'm thankful he didn't try to murder us that night. But
left you
then,
like in the middle of the wilderness in the middle of the night
yeah,
and never came
yeah,
back to
he
get
left.
you?
No, he just left us up in the mountains, and that was his mental illness. He was starting to break down even more. Like, he took off in the middle of the night one night without any shoes on, and came back in the morning like a hole in his leg. And I'll include all these details in my book later, but because they all just paint the picture of like how psychotic he was, you know what I mean? But so he said it was okay for us to live in Utah. And my sister, who works for the courts as a clerk, had an open basement with a few rooms in it. So I was like, can we live with you? Because then it's even like safer, because then she could become a witness potentially if anything happened. And so my daughter was still reporting abuse. She'd say things were happening when, people weren't looking, or like, in the hot tub, at the grocery store, things like that, that he was being very covert and very sneaky to do these things to her. And I got her into counseling. And the counselor one day said, you know what, we can talk about feelings. We could talk about things that make us sad, because my daughter was reporting that she was very sad because of all the things that he was doing to her. Every single time that I would report this, though, and we'd talk to CPS, they'd always be like, you're coaching her. You're coaching her. You're coaching her. You're coaching her. You're coaching. She sighed. She something. That means you're coaching her. She didn't give enough details. That means you're coaching her. Like, and the process that the victims have to go through to actually even be heard was ridiculous, because I was asking questions, because we were at CJC, Children's Justice Center, where they like do the interview, the forensic interview, to see if she discloses. And I asked them, because every single time she would disclose, but because she was so young, she didn't give enough details to them. So I asked them, like, what do you mean? La, 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 asking all these questions. And they said, well, we have a script and we have to read through it, and it takes us about a half hour to 45 minutes. And if the child doesn't disclose all of these details, X amount, they wouldn't tell me how many because they think I'm coaching, then that means that we have to dismiss it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because she literally said, he did this, he did that, he did this, he did that. Those all should have been submitted as child abuse. Those all should have been taken as valid testimony. But just because she didn't continue to talk about all the details or anything else, like, they shut it down. So she loved her counselor, she loved her therapist. And one day her therapist was like, let's talk about emotions. So she started talking about it, and she just was like, blah, 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 and this happened, and blah, 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 and it was over there, and my mom was doing this. And she started to include all the details into it. And the therapist was like recording the session, and then she was able to transcribe it. And then she was the one who reported it that time to CPS. Then that CPS worker came to our house, interviewed us, and then tried to contact her father. He wouldn't ever answer, or something like that. I can't remember. But he finally got him on the line, and he told both of us, he said, he did like a game with us. He said to me, he said, I'm not going to support you guys. I'm not going to support that this abuse is founded. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, how can that be? Like, she did everything, and and the counselor is witness, and and they have the transcripts and blah. And he was like, I'm sorry, I just can't. And I was like, okay, well, thank you. I gotta go. I gotta figure out what to do. And then he also called my ex, and I guess, because he called me back and told me all of this, I guess when he was telling my ex he wasn't going to support him and that he was going to support us, my ex started calling him like all these names, like racial slurs, and like hitting the phone into the wall, and like literally broke his own phone. And so he called me back and said, okay, I'm going to support you. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? You just called me and told me you aren't going to support me. What could have changed in the last 2 minutes? And then he told me what he did and how he had called my ex, and he's like, he's obviously the abuser, not you. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I guess that works. We finally have somebody that will support us after reporting for 5, 6 years with multiple credible evidence, you know? And I was like, okay, whatever, let's just run with it. Okay. So then we were going to get a protective order, and Protective Mothers Revolution was writing my motions for me. And I got a limited scope lawyer, and it was in my sister's courtroom. So she was the clerk, and her dad, my ex tried to get it thrown to another judge because of this, but because she was only in charge of scheduling, it didn't technically interfere with anything. But I think it does help to have an in, because they really don't care about justice. They aren't basing this on what's the law, let's follow the law. It's all about who can we hook up. Oh, I'm gonna hook up my clerk because she does all my scheduling and takes care of everything for me, so I'm gonna hook up her little sister and let her do whatever she wants in this court hearing. And literally what we did is we propositioned my ex and said, if you terminate your parental rights, we will drop this protective order. Because remember, he's the medical field. He was almost like done with his nursing certification so that he could be around more children and helpless people in helpless situations. And he didn't want to lose all of that schooling and have to do construction or something, because he was literally thinking about it. That was like one of our conversations, was he was like, well, maybe I'll just do construction. I was like, yeah, that's perfect, because you watch porn all the time. You'll fit right in with all the rest of them. But no. And so he terminated his parental rights. And I'll never forget these 2 hearings ever in my entire life, because we had to go through the juvenile court for him to terminate his parental rights. And it was based on the grounds of abuse. So that came from that CPS report of domestic violence and child abuse. And he was like still on his, like, in his own world. Oh, I'm just doing this because if I don't, she won't stop calling CPS. Oh, and the judge literally was tapping him on the back, like, yeah, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing, dude. Yeah, you'll get away scot-free. You won't have to ever go to jail. And, you know, you're doing the right thing. You'll find other children to hurt. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. Here's the back door. Goodbye. Goodbye. Have fun. We'll see you next time you try to destroy other people's lives. And then I was like so upset by that I was like, well, maybe I don't want to drop the protective order. And then the judge and the lawyers all just started blah, 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 like yelling at me and pressuring me and coercing me. And they were like, you have to, that's your word, this is what, blah, blah, blah. And I wished I would have just walked away at that moment and been like, no, I'm going to think about it, because I buckled, because I got what I wanted. And that was the only thing I really cared about, was protecting my daughter from having to be with her father in his presence ever again. And so I buckled and was like, okay, whatever, dropping it. We dissolved it. And then that was it. And the divorce finalized, and he's not supposed to reach out or anything, but he still harasses the crap out of us. But he didn't have any consequences at all. I mean, he doesn't even have to pay child support. So I don't think there's any justice at all.
And was there any ever criminal charges, or did you ever
No.
try to?
No, but my daughter can press charges later, and that's kind of why I kept everything a little vague, because she will have to come at it from her own perspective, and with her own case, we'll just have to hire representation for it. So, and that's what our future looks like. So when she's ready to do that, and she's told me she wants to, then we'll move forward with that. But I
And
still don't
so,
think that any criminal charges will ever come from that. I know that the only thing that she could possibly get is monetary compensation, but that's it. And then just, closure that, yes, you did this to me, apologize, stop doing this to people. Hopefully something like that will happen. I'm not sure, but he'll never have any consequences for that other than financial.
And a lot of times, like, there's no statute of limitations when things happen when you're a minor. So, you
Yes.
know, even if it's years later, they could still end up getting prosecuted down the line and they're never fully off the hook. So I wouldn't necessarily write that off. But I wanted to ask you, as somebody who sort of made the decision to try to sort of get back with the abuser or try to keep peace with the abuser to avoid further harm, would you give, if you were to give advice to younger girls or women who find themselves in a similar situation, would you think that that is something that you would advise against because it could cause more harm? Or do you think that what's your thoughts on that?
I can't give any like one set rule for everyone because every situation is different. I think the things that helped me the most to get through everything were to be open to any possibilities. And that was me being open to any possibility whatsoever. Because if I felt like he was more of a violent person, like my first, like my son's father, I wouldn't have chose that because I would have been more afraid that he might murder us. And then, I mean, because look, he wasn't even a violent person, but he still had that ideation where he was thinking about it and possibly planning it. And then I just feel so bad because I know that in the courts, they're going to do whatever they want. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about our rights. They don't care about anything. They'll just collude and, you know, say whatever and commit perjury, do whatever, hide the evidence. They will do whatever they want to make those court hearings go whatever way they want. So, I mean, I'm okay with alternative ways as well, as long as you think them out really well. Think them out really, really well, because I was like even considering running at one point, but I was so terrified of the Hague Treaty because it really felt like they were going to take my daughter and I would never see her again. And I was researching everything, and the Hague Treaty was just so strong. But I did know that if you went to Mexico, they don't have enough police enforcement in Mexico to ever take people back. And so that's kind of like was my loophole. And I even packed my bags all together one day and was like freaking the fuck out. And then I was like, you know what? I can't run. I can't do it. So you have to really listen to your gut, and your gut will guide you, but be open to having any miracles come your way and align yourself with the miracles. Because I remember when we moved to Utah, I started doing meditations and I would listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza every single day. And he talks about if you can visualize a future that you want to have, then you can bring it to you by matching your eternal state with the same state that of that future. So every morning I would wake up and I would visualize the judge being like, you have full custody and we're putting him in jail and la 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 and woo, and we're all celebrating. And none of that happened, but I did get full custody. And I did celebrate after the final divorce hearing and the termination of parental rights, because I was like, yes, she's safe. Because I literally thought we were going to have to fight with him for 18 freaking years of her life and that I was going to die of a heart attack because of all the stress. I literally thought that. And so every single day I was trying to match the vibrationally and in my mind of hope, possibility, miracles happening. And I really truly feel like every little thing that did happen was a miracle. Like my first lawyer saying, that's not due process. That's a goddamn miracle, because now I talk to so many women who in Hawaii and they don't even have any chance whatsoever. The instant they mention sexual abuse, boom, child's gone with the abuser. The sexual abuser will get the child. And so that was our first miracle. The second miracle was that I met Marilee McLean in Denver, Colorado, because we were living in Denver, Colorado, and I went to like a Me Too rally and I heard someone speak, and then I asked her for help, and she told me to reach out to Marilee McLean. And so I got her book, Prosecuted But Not Silenced. And I read it, and I sent a copy to my friend that's a cop in London. And she was like, you've got to find this lady and see if there's anything she can help you with, that she can teach you. And when she sent me the book, her address was on the envelope. And I was like, I'm going to stalk her. And I did. I stalked her. I went to her house and I found her in her garage. And I was like, oh my gosh, please help me. What can you tell me? And she's so sweet. She's like the sweetest woman in the world. And she invited us in. She had chocolate chip cookies. And she was like, okay, we're going to talk about this. And she coached me on how to behave. And she said that if you believe that there is sexual abuse, if you believe that there is physical abuse, that you have to say that you don't know. Otherwise, they can point the finger at you and say you're the attacker because you're the one that's doing parental alienation. You're trying to keep the child, and blah, blah, this is all in your head. So she said, you have to say, oh, I don't know if the abuse is happening, but my child keeps telling me the abuse is happening, and I believe my child to be truthful, and I'm doing what any sane parent would do, and that's report. And that literally was my miracle, because my daughter had reported an incident, and then we went to CPS to for the or CJC for the interview, and then they all had me in a room. There were like 6 CPS workers and like 3 police officers, and they all started grilling me and drilling into me like they were trying to like accuse me of coaching, and like it was the most stressful, horrifying thing I've ever been through. And if I didn't have her guidance of how to position myself, I would have been terrified. So I just said, you know, I really don't absolutely know what's going on, but I do know my daughter keeps reporting it, and I believe her to be true. And I'm just doing what any sane parent would do. And you could tell it diffused all of them. They all diffused because there's nothing they can do at that point. I'm not a coacher. I don't even know what the fuck's going on. You know what I mean? And so I highly advise people to take that route, because then you can't be the one that's having, you know, all the fingers pointed at you. And even though I did see some of the abuse myself with my own eyes, I still had to come across that way. And she said, you can't cry unless it's on the stand, and then you can only cry a little bit. You know, you have to hold yourself together. You have to hold yourself like you're not insane or you're not losing control. How does one do that when your child comes to you and tells you all these horrible things are happening to them and you feel like you have no control? Like, it literally is a marathon, and that's what Marilee calls it, a marathon. And you have to like pace yourself. You have to protect your energy. You have to like, your mindset cannot be, oh, I'm fucking up, or oh, they're gonna win. They're always gonna win. Your mindset has to change. You have to like literally be like, hey, there's a possibility, because love always wins, for me to support my child and protect my child. And you have to always hold yourself with love and pay attention to your thoughts, because your thoughts can, I don't know how many people I've seen self-sabotage because they allow the dark thoughts to consume them and to drag them down. I was helping a girl whose daughter was saying that the dad was trafficking her, basically, you know, she didn't say those words, but the things she was describing, it was her father's trafficking her to like the military personnel, because he lives near a military base. And I tried coaching her and tried telling her, get your daughter into counseling, do all these things. And she just didn't have the mental capacity to hold on to hope. And she was spinning a negative thought pattern and lost all hope. And her daughter was taken from her, and she was very close to suicide. Um, she had to get on all kinds of, you know, medications and just all this stuff. And I'm telling you, you can eliminate all of that stuff just by keeping gratitude in your heart. So if like every day you can just wake up and be like, okay, I'm grateful to still be alive. I'm grateful that I'm still able to fight for my child. I'm grateful that and just keep yourself uplifted in every single way so that your energy vibration is still a match to winning. And I honestly believe that's why we won. That, and my sister was the judge's clerk. So
Yeah. And you make like a really important point, which I think like a lot of women should consider if they ever do
yeah.
find themselves in a situation where their child comes to them and discloses something about, especially
Yeah.
about sexual abuse, because I wish that somebody would have told that to me. And the fact that there is even that we even as women have to think in our minds like, oh, we're going to be accused of coaching, we're going to be accused of lying,
Yes.
like that shouldn't even
Yes.
be the norm, but it is. And like so many women
Yeah.
are naive, and like you think like naturally as a mother, like the first thing you should do is call the police, call CPS, report it to the courts, ask for a restraining order. But when you do those things, nobody thinks that you're going to then have your child get placed with the abuser, have your child taken away from you for reporting abuse that happened in an outside of your care, in somebody
Yeah.
else's care, where that person should be penalized, not you for reporting it. Most women think that's the right thing to do. So you ask yourself, what is the right thing to do? And so it's like you said, like if your child is the one who is making the disclosure and they're saying XYZ happened, like you said, like these are important things to consider. Don't come in there saying, this is what happened. Say, I'm not sure, but however, my child
Yeah.
said this. I believe my child. My child has no reason to lie. And even
Yeah.
so, like even when the children make disclosures, clear disclosures in the forensic interviews, their first thing to do is say, well, the mother must have coached her. Well, we don't believe the child. And it's like, I
Yeah.
feel
And
like
I've
this whole
talked to so many
culture,
professionals that say that there's telltales. Oh, the kid didn't want to talk to me. That means that they were coached. No. And it's interesting that there could be such a huge gap in the perception of the providers that are supposed to be taking care of us and us. So, for example, less than 2% of allegations are false, right? So, less than 2% of the time does somebody make a lie about abuse, right? And say, just make up that somebody abused somebody. Yet, everyone in the court system and therapy system believe that it's much higher for women to lie about abuse of their children just because they're trying to get custody. And that's only a perception that I've seen in family court. And the reason why I know is because my sister works for them. So as I was living with her and as I was going through all of this, I got to see what her perception of everything was. She knew that sexual abuse was wrong. That's why she wanted me to report it. But then as I was going through the whole court process, she was like, well, they're doing this because, most people lie. And I was like, that's not true. And then she'd be like, oh, well, even after he terminated his parental rights, she told me, she's like, well, he still is her father. He should still be a part of her life. And I was thinking, she never would have said that in her life. And just because she's been working at the courts, now she has that perception. That's really weird. So there's some kind of like dogma or, you know, cooler water talk, as you will, that these professionals have where they're bagging on women, saying that we are making these things up most of the time, which kind of helps give the judge a like out, because he's the one who's giving the custody to the abusers and saying all these women are lying. So it makes sense that that would be their culture, right? And it's interesting because one of the things Marilee McLean said is to record every day, voice recordings, so that I could get like possibly like a disclosure from my daughter. And I almost did one day. We had just left the grocery store and we were with her father, but her father had a different car. And then it had been like recording for 7 hours, the voice memo thing on my phone, the app. And my daughter said, I'm so sad. I'm so sad. I'm so sad. Please make him go away. Please make him go away. He touched me. And I said, where did he touch you? And I said, you mean like on your private parts? And because I said that, they said that was coaching too. So, my advice is, if a child comes to you, try to just nonchalantly put the voice memo on your phone without them seeing it. If you can. If you can't, just be present with them and say, I believe you. And I want you to keep saying what happened to you and keep speaking up about what happened to you to everybody, and tell them all the details, tell them how it made you feel, tell them, where you were at, if it was day or night, who else was there, what were other people doing, tell them everything, and keep telling people until somebody believes you. And I'm going to work hard to help you so that people will believe you. But if it's just me and you, or if it's just me telling your story, no one's going to believe me. But if both of us keep telling everybody, then it should be okay. And then just keep telling them that. And you can never ask them questions with answers in them. You have to only ask them, oh, what do you mean they touched you? You can only repeat what they said. So if she said something like, oh, well, we were at the hospital and we went to the table, then I could only say, okay, you were at the hospital and you went to the table? Okay, what next? Or what else? You can't really give them any answers, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, because then
you can't say like, oh, what happened at the table, but you can't say, oh, did they touch you on the table? Like, you can't use leading questions, because like they like to say, oh, it's so hard, especially with younger kids, because like a lot of times they need like you to clarify things, but people love to say like there's such a distinction between leading questions and coaching. Because like if you ask a so-called leading question, it could be an important question that gets a very important specific answer, but they try to say it's a leading question. So what? That doesn't mean the child is lying. That doesn't mean that it's not true. And so, I think that there's this fine line between that. But as somebody who's also been through, a similar situation, I would suggest also to parents who, if they find themselves in the situation where they have the disclosure and the child comes to them, I would suggest, before going straight to the police or before going straight to DCF, to first take your child to the pediatrician, or take your child to the hospital, or take your child to a therapist. Because if the hospital reports it, or the pediatrician or the therapist reports it, it is going to look so much better than if you report it yourself, because then they can easily say, oh, you lied, you coached. But when it's the medical professional making the report, a lot of times it's held with more merit in the court's eyes, in DCF.
And that's why I truly believe in telling the kids, okay, I'm going to help you, but you have to keep telling everybody. You have to keep telling every adult that, that we talk to, what happened, so that we can find protection and so people will believe us. Yeah, which is so sad to try to tell a kid, no one's going to believe you unless you do it exactly like this. It's so
and
sad.
like my daughter, like she was saying, oh, well, and like she would say like, well, I can't say anything because everybody's going to be mad at me. And like daddy said, I can't say anything. So it's like, that's the other thing you got to consider. Kids are being told if they talk, they'll be hurt. And they'll say, if you keep your mouth shut, you'll get a reward, you'll get a bribe, you'll get a prize, a present, whatever it is. If you keep your mouth shut, or if you talk, you'll get hit, you'll get punished, whatever it is. So it's like, DCF never considers that. When they go to these houses and they ask the children, "Oh, are you safe at home?" "Yeah, I'm safe." Of course you're going to say that when your father or mother is right there hovering over your shoulder, and as soon as DCF leaves, you're going to never hear the end of it if you said something to them. So it's like, I think there's so many flaws in the system, but I think the best thing that people can try to do is to try to like educate themselves, like empower themselves, and like do what they can. Even if you have never been to school before, there's so many things on the internet. There's so many resources, even like with AI. And I think that
Yeah.
you have done some work with AI. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so after my case was over, I would try to help people by helping them understand what was in their legal motions and just like helping them understand what they could do next. And so I was using AI to help me with that. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then you can use a GPT and train a pre-trained transformer to act just like a lawyer. And it can like advise me on like how to, write these motions or what my legal arguments are, what violations are happening. It can help me organize my timeline. It can help me create evidence packets. It can help me prepare a speech in front of the judge, or help grill me so that I can practice my answers if I'm on the stand or anything like that. And I was like, oh, this is brilliant. Maybe I can use this to help other women. And I was with Jeanette, we were helping women do this, and Jeanette more so, because I was feeling a little reserved about the way we were doing it. And now look what's happening. They've gone after Jeanette, and they are trying to put her in prison for 4 years. And Protective Mothers Revolution, the ones that helped me write my motions when I was going through everything, had already told me that they had to leave the country because people were attacking them, and they were trying to sue them and trying to lock them up and put them into some kind of criminal position. And so I just was really worried that something like that might happen. And then it occurred to me that if I just position everything as, because AI, you can learn everything with AI. And if I just position myself as somebody who's giving somebody information on how to create a GPT, a generative pre-trained transformer, that they could, essentially use that as their guide, their advisor, their to write their motions and to set all of that up. Well, then I'm not teaching anyone legalese. I'm not teaching anyone anything about any legal matters at all. All I'm teaching them is AI. And that's kind of the route that I'm decided to go down to protect myself and my family. And I also want to broaden that later with teaching women how to use AI to make money, because there's a lot of money in AI consulting and different AI processes like AI marketing, and pretty much building apps for people, building, chat bots, things like that. Like I built a chat bot for a company. It took me 2 days and they paid me $10,000. So there's a huge opportunity right now for women to really like level up the playing field between us, if women are learning AI. So I do have a workbook, and I'll share it with you so that you can share it with anyone that wants it. And it's also on my bio of all of my social medias, platforms. And if it's okay, I did want to talk a little bit about a couple other books that I wanted to recommend as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, The End of Family Court, if you haven't read this one, it's a really good one, and it talks about different ways that our rights are being violated in different processes that are happening. I recommend that you put this one and there's another one that I don't have. It's Keith Harmon Snow's The Worst Interest of the Child. That one's in digital format, and if you don't have it, you can also reach out to the libraries and they have to give you a digital copy, even though they don't have it in paperback format. There are digital formats online, and I do have it, so if you reach out to me, I can send it to you. But if you put both of those into your generative pre-trained transformer in the file records, it will help it reason on your behalf because it's already understands what's going on. It already understands the RICO acts. It already understands all of the, civil rights issues, the violations, everything that's happening. And it just really helps to create a better guide. And then this other one, Child Hunters, Requiem of a Child Killer. And this one is by Karine, so Carine, Hutzbat, Hutsebaut, Child Hunters, Requiem of a Child Killer. And she's worked with MI6 and the FBI to profile child killers. And she said that we've had conversations. She's on, we're friends on Facebook now. I've reached out to her and she said that what is happening in family court is like beyond her. She sees it. She knows we basically came to an agreement that it's not broken. This is the way that it's meant to be. This is how they set it up to be. It was made this way intentionally to cause harm, to profit as much as possible because it is a money grab from the protective parent. A protective parent will fight and keep going to court and pay the court fees and pay the bonds and blah, 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 and keep it going. And we all know that the bonds and all of the court fees go into a judicial retirement fund, and that's what helps fluff up their retirement funds. So we see the RICO acts, we see the corruption, and it goes all the way to the top. I mean, if the DOJ is the one investigating the DOJ didn't do nothing wrong, right? So that's the unpopular opinion that the National Safe Parents Alliance won't talk about. But it truly is a pandemic because now that the rest of the world sees how profitable this trafficking industry is in family court, it's the whole Hobbesian dilemma that, there's this secret handshake between the government and men that they will stay in power. They will be the power of the household. And so, of course, they get the children and yada, yada, whatever, whatnot. It also has a deeper root to it because why would the amount of children that are being given to abusers go up if sexual assault is involved? They're literally trafficking children.
Right.
To their
It just
parents.
makes no sense. Like,
Yeah.
you would never in a million years think that would be related. But yet it's the number one, root cause of a custody transfer.
Yeah, so www.centerforjudicialexcellence.org has the stats, and they have like a little pamphlet, and you can read the pamphlet, and it says that 85% of alleged abusers gain custody in family court. But then they have like another section on their website. I can't remember exactly where it is, but it talks about if CSA is reported, that number goes up to 98%. 98% of alleged sexual assault abusers on children are getting custody in the United States. That's a huge trafficking industry. And now that the world knows that, they're all mimicking it. So we've heard from Brazil, they're mimicking it. They've heard from the UK, they're mimicking it. Israel, every single country that I've talked to anyone in, they're mimicking it. Canada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And another thing that we have to think about, like, why would they do that? Why would they do that? Okay, so those in power have stocks and investments in medical and pharmaceutical. So ACE's studies show that the more ACE points you have, or whatever, the more trauma that you have as a child, the more likely you are to be sick, mentally ill, need the hospital, need prescriptions, and need medical care when you're older. So we're the commodity, we're the product. They're making sick people so that they can treat it later. But there's also another level to that, right? And I mean, a lot of people don't go this deep down the rabbit hole, but I have. And I don't know, I really feel like there's something to it. There was a CIA, no, he was head of the FBI for 30 years. His name was Ted Gunderson. And he investigated a lot of like child sacrifices, like different things like that, trafficking, child trafficking rings, things like that, cults. He would investigate cults here in the United States. And when he retired, he started something called the Vampire Hunters. And he said that the Illuminati have these rituals that they do where they will sacrifice children and turn their blood into drugs. And they call it Special K, or they call it Black K. And it's basically, they take a child and they torture the child so much that their adrenal glands are just dumping all this adrenaline into their blood. And then they like slit their throat or do some other way of extracting the blood from the child. And then that's what they turn into the drug. And they say it's all part of like a blackmail society where they get people to enter into these societies, and then they lure them in with, you know, underage women, and then they get them to do more and more and more and more disgusting things, and they use those things over their head. It's very much the Epstein files and everything that was happening with Epstein. Well, taking another step further, Ted Gunderson was really worried that they were going to gain control of our government and create a coup in the United States. And there's been a lot of other talk about that as well with the book, Pawns in the Game. I don't know if you've heard about that. It was written by Thomas Carr, I believe. But he basically talked about how the Illuminati, and I guess he was part of them and did like an undercover sting operation, something like that, and found out what their agenda was. And they were telling people, become politicians, become judges, become lawyers, become cops, become, you know, fire department, become the doctors. And we're going to infiltrate into society. And we're going to have, you know, our orgy parties, our pedophile parties, our sacrificing parties. And that's how we're going to gain control over the entire world. And we're going to own the world. That directly correlates with what I witnessed myself. You know how when TikTok first came out and everybody was just like, trauma dumping, this is what's happening to me, and there were like 1 million Epstein victims, and there were 1 million like, you know, child sexual assault victims, and like all this stuff. Well, I was truly at that time just wanting to figure out how I can help people more. So I was talking to a lot of people trying to figure out what their stories were, and I would hear the most gruesome stories about like family orgies like on the East Coast mostly, where they would say that their family would get together with other families in the community and share each other's children. And then if the children never talked about it, they'd like, you know, harm them or hurt them or whatever. And one of them was this girl, and she was talking about how that all of that was going on and that it was some secret society, a cult. They were talking about, babies were being eaten at these parties, like all kinds of things. And one of the only men that I believed was truly a victim that I talked to, and I'm sure there's a lot of men victims. I just don't like to talk to men, so I don't really talk to them. But one that I did talk to, I really believed his story because he went through all those signs. He presented as somebody who was highly paranoid and scared and going through a lot of trauma. And he told me it just happened to be his wife who was the pedophile. And his wife was doing that to their sons. And she was a teacher and she was doing it at the school. And somehow everybody in this little town stepped up to protect the wife. And they all prosecuted him as like the most craziest person in the world. And I really believed him because I was like, oh my gosh, I could see his behaviors. You can't fake, oh my God, I think I'm going to die and people are after me. Paranoia after being traumatized. Like there's a certain way that people with CPTSD act, like they can't form sentences. They'll have like pauses in their speech. They'll look like they're literally traumatized and like they just walked out of a horror movie or something. So where I was going with all of that is that I believe that's why our government has been acting this way from inception. So family court hasn't always been around. I believe it's only been around since like the 70s. And we all know that Richard Gardner was the #1 leading psychologist in the 70s, and that he was a pedophile and he was pushing the pedophile propaganda to the world, and that women are all liars and we're just hysterical and pedophilia is fine and blah, 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 blah. And he was our leading psychologist in the world for children in the in the United States. So that really shows a lot of what's going on. And then I did a deep dive into MK Ultra and like all their findings. And then so it makes sense that if they wanted to create a population where everybody was sick and needed support from them, that they could provide all of that support and it'd be never ending, right? And so that's also another reason that I think that our government is under a coup, is because so many of the actors in our government are ignoring evidence, or they're committing perjury, or they really just don't have the best interest of the child in heart. And I think that we've all been screaming at the top of our lungs, but I truly feel like we're being silenced. Anyone who is a victim seems to get penalized or shadow banned or blocked on social media, and that doesn't allow them to share what is going on with them or anything like that. And so everything just keeps pointing to the top of the rung of the ladder. And we've even gone to the UN. We've had people address the UN. I mean, look at Nancy Schaefer. I mean, of course, that was about CPS, but it's basically the same thing. I mean, just a different head of the Hydra, but she was talking about that. And then look how she was silenced. She was murdered, literally murdered, because they're making so much money off of trafficking our children through CPS that they just decided to kill her. And we all know that money talks and bullshit walks, because that's just, we've made our entire government into this cesspool of like weirdos. And why is it a question of whether or not our president is pedophile? And it feels like it's been like that for the last, few presidents. And I don't know. I just want everyone to have a broader perspective of what could possibly be happening, because that is why, because people go into family court and then they figure out it's corrupt and then they want to know what can be done. And I'm literally saying the only thing that we can do is infiltrate our country back. Like, good people have to go back into all of these careers. I was just looking up dental anesthesiast, and I was wondering if they had a female one, and they don't even have one in the entire state. And I was like, why is that? Why would men want to be the only ones that want to put kids to sleep? And we all know that that's happened quite a bit too. I'm going to turn on the light. Sorry. We all know that's happened quite a bit as well with, medical professionals. And it just seems like it's this disease that's taking over our society. And it's very disheartening, because I want there to be a resolution. And right now, I just don't see a resolution other than, we can keep speaking up. We can keep educating each other. We can keep pushing for healing and reform, because really these people just need to heal. But without accountability, nothing's going to change. It's only going to get worse, because literally they said that the amount of CSAM on the internet, child, porn on the internet went up 400% during 2020. Where were those kids? They were with their caretakers. They were at home. And if the courts are giving custody to abusers 85, 98% of the time, and if courts are giving these foster children to abusers, then it makes sense that a lot of our children are in harm's way right now in the United States, and nothing is being done about it. And I think that domestic violence has increased since then. And then 8 out of 10 of the job titles that women hold are going away because they're going to be taken by AI. And so right now, it is more important than ever to make sure that you have secure income, so that you don't fall into a trap of domestic violence, and to educate yourselves and to learn AI. So.
Yeah. And I think it's important for women to sort of look at it as like, instead of thinking like, oh no, AI is going to take my job, think of it like, how can I use AI to start a side hustle? How can I use AI to come up with a business plan of something where I won't need a lot of money to get started? And I think there's so many opportunities more than ever before. And, it's like we said, like, since the 1970s, 1980s, when all of this stuff really started changing with the family courts and everything, that's only like 1 or 2 generations ago. So it hasn't been that long. And, yes, it can, if it continues unchecked, it will get worse, but it can also go in the opposite direction if enough people start to speak up, not be scared, because in our generation and before that, it's always been keep your mouth shut. If abuse happens, don't talk about it. What happens in the home stays in the home. But now people are starting to get courage, speaking up on social media, like advocating for themselves, for their children. And like so many of us grew up where we told our mothers about the abuse and our moms just said, oh, well, brush it under the rug, just keep your mouth shut. Where now we're risking it all to fight for our daughters and teaching them not to accept abuse and the bare minimum. And I think like the AI stuff can be really powerful if people use it as a tool to like educate yourself. I use it as a research tool. And I think, there's a lot of good things out there. So are you, if other people are, like interested, don't know where to get started, are you offering free services?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I do have that workbook and it'll teach you how to create a generative pre-trained transformer. So a GPT, you do have to use Chat GPT, but you can take the tool or the guide and use it in Google Gems as well if you wanted to create a gem instead, or any kind of pre-trained transformer. Because how AI works is there's open AI, and it's all the information out there. Everything that could possibly be entered in has been entered in. And then there's generative pre-trained transformers, and it's kind of like a little folder of information. So if you want to have really good results, then you have to really train your agent, your little AI helper, in exactly what you want. So then you just tell it, grab the books or grab the laws or grab the rules, or, understand what they're talking about in this book, and help me determine how to strategize, understand, and prepare for my family court hearings. And then you have to work with it, and you have to learn prompt engineering and stuff like that. So if you reach out to me or Theodora, we can get you the workbook link, and I will have some other things coming soon, hopefully really soon, so that I can help women really like elevate their lives. Because yeah, it can't replace you. I mean, everybody that did fire a lot of their employees are hiring people back again, because they actually need people to help them run the AI and use the AI, because AI doesn't replace you, but somebody who knows how to use it might. And it is still true, though, that 8 out of the 10 job titles that women hold will go away, like calling services, receptional services. Even my career changed a lot. So I did video advertising for companies. And as soon as AI came out, I had to reinvent myself because I wasn't getting enough clients, because now AI can make their videos for them. And so, I mean, we're going to see so much change in the next few years that it's going to be unbelievable. I say, let's just reject the digital ID, try to remain autonomous as humans, and yet we still can embrace things and treat them as tools to help us further ourselves in society as well. Because if we don't understand what all the tools that people have, then they could be used against us. But if we understand the tools, and we use those to understand the jargon or the legalese or how to make money in this new era, then we'll be fine. And like I
Yeah.
said, I've been using AI to make money, and it's actually a lot more lucrative than anything else. A lot of people say it's the new gold rush. So I strongly advise anyone that doesn't have any money to start really researching different ways that they can make money online. And I do a lot of posts and stuff, and I put them out there for people to learn. So.
Yeah. And I think it's important to just be able to continuously adapt. And as technology advances and with AI and everything like that, being able to learn it, adapt and grow and use it as a tool. A lot of people make the mistake of like depending on it or like blindly trusting it. Well, they'll say like, make me a motion, and they expect to just get like a complete thing that they can just copy and paste. It doesn't work like that. You have to use it as a tool, as a research tool, as a,
Yeah.
sort of like an assistive tool, but not as a complete thing that you rely on blindly.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, if you just went into a free version of ChatGPT and started to try to write a motion, it's just going to get you writing in circles. And you're going to be writing in circles and circles and circles and circles. And remember, it's because I said OpenAI has all the information out there. And that's why I teach women how to make the little folder with the information of the laws and stuff like that, because then they're going to get clearer, more concise ones. And then if you want to, you just don't even want to train a GPT, just ask me for the one that I use and I'll share that. And one other thing is that AI can hallucinate and it can make up shit. So it can make up, case law or sightings or try to like frame things a certain way. So learning prompt engineering on how to talk to your AI is also really important if you're going to be using it for this. But it's just an avenue. I know a lot of people studied the law just by reading the books and going on the websites and doing all the research, and that is the hard way to do it, but it's also going to get you the best results. So what I recommend for people to do is after they've written a motion or something, to go back in and make sure that you understand every single little sentence, every single citing, what they're talking about, and look it up and make sure that it makes sense to you and it makes sense on multiple sources with multiple sources, because if not, then you could possibly have like a bunk um motion. But I've been using it and I've been doing that, and so far so good. I don't know if in the future they're going to try to ban it because it's so effective, but if you're, learning how to do it yourself and you hire limited scope attorney. So what that means is like you write all the motions, you do all the research, you do everything, and then you just hire a lawyer to show up like maybe an hour before your court hearing, and you send them the paper and they just read it in that hour, and you give them a quick debriefing, and they're just your talking head in court. You know what I mean? That's one of the best ways that I've found that people can represent themselves without having to break the bank, without giving complete control to the lawyers, because we all know that lawyers collude and sometimes they'll throw your case or, not submit something or withhold something just to keep the status quo moving of you paying lots of money to stay in family court. We all know that lawyers can be just as corrupt as any of these judges that are giving custody to kids or to abusers as well. So.
Absolutely. So if there was one final piece of advice you would give to any moms who may find themselves in a situation dealing with DV or child abuse or anything like that, where they're maybe new to the situation and not sure what to do, what would be one last thing that you would say just to, other moms who may be new to this?
I think I would say that to remember who you are and to remember that you're the love and the light. And that's why you care about your child, and that nothing will ever dim you as long as you have a sound constitution to keep your flame inside and your fire burning inside. And that doesn't mean that you have to comply. It doesn't mean you have to agree. It doesn't mean that, any of that, because there was a story I heard about a man who was like a prisoner of like Vietnam or something like that for 30 years. They tortured the shit out of him, and all of his fellow prison mates that were kidnapped were tortured in the same way and then murdered or died because they just couldn't handle it, or they'd commit suicide. And when he was interviewed afterwards, he said, I knew that the only thing that they couldn't take from me was what was in my mind and my heart. And so I held on to that. And I think if you can hold on to your heart and the love that you have for your children, that anything's possible. And as long as you keep the self-talk in your head, loving and with gratitude, that you'll keep yourself on the same energy level as the miracles that you want to attract into your life. And I think those are the most important things. Surround yourself with community. And I know it's really hard because a lot of the time people can't handle the negativity and they can't handle the truth of how dark all of this is. And that's why, you have advocates and other women who have maybe been through it, and just reach out to them and really work on and practice keeping your sound constitution, that love in your heart, that knowing that love always wins in the end, and that the pain won't last forever.
I like that.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for all of your time and
Of
everything that you've
course.
shared. Done.
I'm
And
grateful.
yeah, and thank you so much. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, would you recommend, is Facebook usually a good way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, Facebook's okay to get a hold of me. It's best if you commented on something because I get so many messages and I try to go through them like as soon as I can. So it's usually like every 3 days, but I'll try to get it more. And then I'm gonna try to get a bot set up that will help bring intake in because I'll miss somebody that needs like maybe a little support. And I don't like missing people, but if I've missed you in the past, I apologize. It's just because there's like a high volume of people that reach out to me. And so I'm doing my best to maintain that and maintain my taking care of my daughter and maintain making money for myself. So I appreciate everybody's patience.
Okay, but if somebody comments, you'll see it probably better than if they message you.
Well, yeah, because I go through the notifications as often as I can and then messages not as often. So I should, but any way you can, try to contact me and I will support you as long as I can.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to, collaborating with you in the future.
Yeah,
And thank you again for sharing everything with us. This is really great conversation.
absolutely. We're stronger together and we can do this.
Definitely.
Yeah. Have
Well,
a good
take
night,
care.
everybody.
Great. And we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much.